It's a weird market and probably confusing for entrepreneurs. The market's been down, the interest rates are up. A couple guys from Uber with a few slides of a deck were raising millions of dollars at the snap of their finger. People are being asked for, okay, show me a few $1 million in ARR before I give you your first round of capital, right? So anything that's got, Gen AI strapped to the name is raising millions of dollars with a couple slides and the snap of a finger. So, the way I describe the market, it's like, when you pull your frozen dinner out of the freezer and you put it in the microwave and one bite is freezing cold and the next bite is scalding hot. I think that describes the venture market in 2024.
Welcome to Tech Careers and Money Talk. I'm excited today to introduce everybody to Brett Martin. If you don't know Brett, he is a multimodal executive. Yes, I think we may have just coined that term, but he's the president and co-founder of Kumo Space. Kumo Space is a virtual space for remote work companies and also hybrid companies that have people in the office as well. At the same time, he's a general partner in Charge Ventures, a premium pre-seed and seed venture capital fund based out of Brooklyn, New York. I know he's also an avid sailor, and he also does some part-time work at Columbia. Welcome to the show, Brett.
Chris, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here, and excited to commiserate about people who try to do too much.
Yeah, I know it is definitely much more. People perceive it's glamorous, but it's definitely a hard work, and I think it is. Sometimes we're maybe a little too goal oriented. But we'll get to that in the second half of the show. In the first half of the show, I really want to focus on the work that you're doing at Kumo Space. I think that remote work is something that we can leverage to unlock geographic freedom, right? It provides a lot of upside, a lot of flexibility in our lifestyle, but it's also hard. I'm curious what you're seeing right now as you are out in the marketplace selling Kumo Space to help enable remote work and hybrid work, et cetera. What are you seeing for the market right now in and around remote work?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a crazy few years, right? Going from kind of a backwater of, only outsourced back office folks doing remote work to the entire working population during the pandemic to, I'd say like we're just coming out of a period of post-pandemic uncertainty. I think in 2022, 2023, it was, a confluence of conflicting narratives, remote work plus, return to the office. We're all going to go back. And, I think it's 2024. Commercial real estate occupancy in New York is still, 50%. And I think we realize, well, actually the cat's not getting back into the bag. And this sort of remote hybrid thing is here to stay. And so at least in our own business, I think we really saw coming out of 2023, people start realizing like, oh, we need to actually start planning for the long term here. We can't, it's not going back to the way it was. And what's the future going to look like? So, we believe it's going to be a long-term secular trend. Anything that can be done on the internet will be done on the internet, but people are trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way of doing it now? That's where Kumo Space comes in.
Right. And so are you seeing, so let me ask you this, sort of in the blend of companies that you're seeing, looking at Kumo Space, because I think it's an interesting vantage point because you get to see who's trying to do this successfully. What are you seeing sort of percentage wise between, maybe newer companies that are founded remote versus, more traditional companies that are trying to leverage a resource like this to enable hybrid?
Yeah. I mean, I think the dominant design is generally hybrid, right? I think but I do think that there are certain types of companies that are fully remote, or in certain departments in larger companies that are fully remote. So I think, for larger companies, you're definitely outsourcing whatever functions you can, and you're outsourcing that to lower cost geographies. And the truth is the world is flat and there's brilliant people all over the world, and you can get, them at, half to a third of the price, depending on where you're working. And so having the right technologies to enable seamless collaboration with those folks is, something big companies have been investing in for years, right? Actually, a lot of Kumo Space's customers are actually firms that were remote before the pandemic and continue to be, remote afterward, right? So we've got digital marketing agencies, we've got a bunch of consulting companies, professional services firms, contacts, and call centers. Then on the smaller side, right, you've got, startups. And I think that, startups, when they're very early, they're obviously like just getting off the ground. They don't have an office, so they're working remote by definition. Then they probably pull together into physical space, get the kind of initial core group of people together, shoulder to shoulder, but then kind of quickly realizing, well, okay, well, how do we compete with these big tech companies? Well, now that the big tech companies are calling everyone back into the office again, guess what? The best people want, everyone loves flexibility, everyone loves freedom. And so if you're truly the creme de la creme, you can work on your own terms. And startups are courting those folks by saying, hey, you want to live in Portugal and work at my startup? Like, let's go. We're happy to do it. So I think, that's how you end up having kind of a distributed team pretty early on as from a startup.
So the companies that are winning it from your vantage point, right? You get the opportunity to see them implementing a software that enables remote work. What are some of the characteristics? What are some of the traits that these companies, inhibit that are doing remote work well right now?
Well, we were talking about it, before the show, right? And your experience at GitLab. I mean, I think like there's what people had figured out before is, it's really good when you're very structured processes, very clear, transparent processes. You can, measure people, based on their output, and that's like all those things apply. Good management applies whether you're sitting in a box together or you're working distributed. Good management is good management. I think one of the things that gives companies that use Kumo Space an edge is that it's actually, the hardest part of our job at KumoSpace is not selling software. It's selling a new way of working, which is, hey, we're going to be remote, but we're still going to show up and be accountable for each other, right? In the same way that, it's like one of the main benefits of being in a physical office is actually not being surrounded by four walls. It's actually saying, hey, from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, we are going to be available for each other unless otherwise stated. And I think, when you
Right.
choose to work in Kumo Space, you actually are making the same commitment to your team. Hey, we're going to show up and be accountable for each other. Now, that doesn't mean that, if you use Kumo Space, you can't step out and, walk the dog or, go to the gym or do yoga in the middle of the day. In fact, we've got a whole status feature where, we say that. And in Kumo Space, we're actually working in and out of the office throughout the day. But I think as a baseline to say, hey, we're working remotely, but we're still going to be accountable and transparent to each other. Like that is the biggest difference. That to me, that's the biggest difference between success and, pretending to work a startup.
Right, because everybody, what that does is it goes back to this, everybody's on an equal footing, and it's focused on, to your point, not micromanaging, but just the transparency, the availability, so that anybody who has questions or needs to get unblocked can understand how to do that.
I mean, well said. It's funny because sometimes people will look at Kumo Space and say, oh, like, is this surveillance software or isn't this, you trying to micromanage me? And it's funny. It's like, actually, no, we're giving remote equity. We're making we call it remote work equity. We're saying, hey, you can work remotely for this company and get the FaceTime with your boss and get the mentorship from leadership and get those promotions, and become and be a critical exec in the success of this company, right? You're not relegated to back office, right? So that it's really a matter of perspective. You can see it as, oh, this is a tool to micromanage, or you can see it as, wow, this is my opportunity to get a leg up and really be, promoted and succeed in a company that truly cares about its remote employees.
Well, and I really like the positioning there of remote work equity, because that sort of denotes that you're getting some type of leverage, right? Because I think what you're contending with, and I think this is interesting based on my experience of GitLab as well, is to be able to engage with employees. If you're not physically present, it has to be known and understood, to your point, when you're available. You also want to have some level of organization and cadence around when you're engaging, whether that's with your team, whether that's with other executives, et cetera, because being known, understanding how you're contributing, all of that stuff is going to be a part of your contribution to the company that's going to weigh in onto your performance review, that's going to weigh in onto your promotions, that's going to weigh in onto your ultimate impact.
100%. And I think, you talk about like structured, unstructured conversations. And if you think about,
Yeah.
we have Zoom for our structured conversations, and we can, send someone a Teams message and say, hey, let's catch up. And then a couple hours later, they get back to you and they say, okay, great. When do you want to do it? And then you say, okay, maybe on tomorrow, at 5 p.m. I sent you a meeting, a calendar invite. And, if you're a startup, losing 24 hours between needing, someone's feedback on something and then getting it, if you lose 24 hours 5 times a week and then 20 times a month and then, thousands of times a year, that is really going to slow down your ability to ship. And so what we think about is, Kumo Space is, hey, we're that tool for your unstructured catch up, quick, video or audio conversations. And, you need both, right? You can either be super, super structured, which I think works great for, teams full of engineers. But for, the rest of us, like sometimes we actually need a little unstructured time with our colleagues to like fill in the blanks. And Kumo Space kind of is that tool for remote work.
Well said, because, when you think about it, the ability to succeed in tech is the ability to change rapidly, right? And sometimes we need to compress a month's worth of work into a week. And so being able to, you're right, not, remove sort of the slack out of the rope and be able to get those changes done quickly is important. So yeah, unstructured conversations, understanding when people are available, and you're doing that remote, meaning that you don't have to physically be present, but you get the ability to do that remotely, I think is very powerful.
We're getting rid of the slack. You just said it perfectly. Yeah. You've got the credit for that when I work it into my next marketing campaign.
Well, yeah. And I think part of it, having worked remote, and that was my, when I left the office in 2019 to take a sabbatical, and, as I was building out my private equity company and making the decision to go back in and do another run at tech, I knew I didn't want to go back into an office. So I was really seeking these remote opportunities. And this is where, when you know what you're looking for and the GitLab opportunity came along, it was definitely, match made. Plus, coupled with the fact that the opportunity came, right at the height of 2020. That was really cool. But understanding this, I'd like to sort of shift this conversation from, what's making companies successful to what's making people successful, right? What's making employees successful? Because some of the things, when you go out, and I talk to a lot of technology employees weekly around career, around money, and some of the concerns, right? We know the benefit of remote work is the flexibility. The concern is that people won't see my work. I won't get recognized. I won't get the promotion that I want. What are some of the things, and again, I know there's a tool involved here, but just thinking, conceptually, what are some of the important things that, people need to be doing when they are remote work to make sure that they are getting the visibility that they need?
Yeah. So it's so funny. I think one of the downsides of remote work is that you will sink to the lowest common denominator. It's very easy to just do what's asked of you, right? Like if you think about how big companies have historically used remote work, is that it's basically, any sort of back office function, right? You're saying, okay, this isn't actually that important. This is a commoditized skill, and we're going to basically make it as modular as possible. And then we're going to ship it off to the lowest possible geography. And then we're going to quality control, the hell out of it. Right. And sort of, make sure that, just nothing goes wrong, right? That's the classic. And so that's kind of what's expected, I think, of most remote workers, is to be this little like work API endpoint, where you sit in your box, and the work comes in, and you do the work, and then you send it back, and it could be basically done, through a screen, and no one would know the difference of who you are or why you exist. And I think as a remote worker, it's very easy to just let that happen to you, right? Because if you think about, in an in-person situation, the interesting work or this interesting opportunities or interesting conversations are often happening before the meeting, on the walk to the event, or after the all hands, when people are in small groups talking about what was just said, and what it might mean, or at lunch, and with your boss, where he talks about some idea he has, and then you get the idea to maybe I'll like start helping with that, or pitching him some ideas, right? And so I think that in between those liminal moments are actually where the opportunities to go above and beyond are found. And I think as a remote worker, like, getting that exposure to those opportunities and those moments is absolutely critical. And that's obviously like a tool like Kumo Space makes that happen in a more organic way. When we have, it's funny when you see a meeting happen in Kumo Space at, on all hands, everyone kind of is moving across the office and assembling and having kind of little conversations in advance of the meeting. And, so we recreate that. But even if, your company wasn't using a tool like Kumo Space, I think you as a remote worker have to actually put in that extra effort to be there before and after the creation of work product, and to petition your bosses to have those extra side opportunities and those extra side quests. So I think it's probably making yourself known and raising your hand, and then also working at a company where they actually see the value in remote employees as not just cost centers and things to be quality controlled, but rather as like opportunities to to basically see them as people who can do more than just their what they were tasked with.
Right. So it sounds like company selection is critical, meaning that you want to choose a company where the remote work is still doing leading things when it comes to product, when it comes to marketing, whatever discipline you're working in. You want to make sure the company understands and values what remote work is doing. And then, we talked a little bit about this before in the context of structured versus unstructured conversations. It sounds like having those unstructured conversations before and after, making sure that you're engaged in some level of networking and side chats before and after meeting is really important to help you, just understand more of the culture and feel like you're engaging even though you are remote.
Yeah, at the end of the day, all the same rules apply. People want to work with who they want to work with. They want to, they want to work with people who they care about on some sort of, personal level. And I think as a remote employee, you just got to do the extra work to get in there, and also, meet these people in person. I mean, I sell remote work software, but that doesn't mean that I don't think spending quality, physical time is important. And so if I were a remote worker and I had the opportunity, like, would I, show up in HQ once a quarter and show my face? Like 100%.
Right. And I think that's such an important takeaway, is that remote work, right? Think about the 80-20 or 90-10, meaning that you want the ability to be able to be remote and have that flexibility for a majority of the time, but there still does need to be some level of human connection, human interaction, to really get the most out of this experience.
Well, that's the, hilarious part, is that sometimes people bridle against, Kumo Space is, it's like, I don't want to have this. I want to have this like accountability applied to me. But it's like, when people turn their mind, is that when they're faced with the alternative of, oh wait, I actually have to. My alternative is to show up in the show up in the office for 5 days a week, people change their tune really fast and say, "Oh, wait, actually, this is such a blessing we have to be able to work from anywhere in the world, whenever whenever we want." I mean, I honestly, I mean, as someone else who has more than one job, I mean, it's just amazing. If I want to work two jobs and work 80 and 90 hours a week, like I now I can.
Right, right. You can, and I also, the one thing I always get really curious about, especially when and I didn't have a lot of experience with this, but it is concerning when people say they don't want to be accountable, because ultimately, right, we are exchanging results for a paycheck, and so there does need to be some tangible output. This is not, hey, we're paying you money to work on, your ideas. There does need to be some core level of accountability. Now, not meaning like if you want to go and take breaks, and if you want to be, private about what you're doing on that time, whether that's, yoga, taking a nap, whatever, I get that. But ultimately, I do think that there does need to be, a shared responsibility that says, hey, we're going to be accountable to make sure that the team and this business that we're opting into is moving forward.
Oh yeah, I've posted on LinkedIn about the 20-minute 3 p.m. Post lunch power nap is one of the biggest benefits
Mm.
of working from home on the planet. Yeah, give me that 3 p.m. nap and I'll go till 10 p.m. No problem.
Well, yeah, that's hilarious, because I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to get to working remote is I had always fantasized about living the siesta lifestyle where, yeah, once you eat your food, taking a 20 or 30-minute little power nap it's medicine. It is medicine for your mind, for your soul, and you're right. Like, I get a power nap, I'm totally different. I remember being in experiences where I was in the office dragging so hard. It's like, man, if I could just lay down.
I mean, Google's got
Yeah.
the nap pods, right? So now if you're working from home, why I don't need to sleep in a pod. I can my bed's around the corner.
Go there. Yeah. My experience was that is I was working for Accenture, and I was based in Kawasaki City, Japan. We were doing this big global rollout for Dell of their instance of Salesforce.com. This was back in 2008. And I remember I had this executive meeting at 3, and then at 3:30 I would go down, and they had this incredible pod room where they had all these little massage chairs. Like, so you're getting massage, and then you put on the earphones with classical music, and you could just nap out. And that's where I really figure this whole thing out. And I'd schedule a meeting for a half hour every day. I'd go get that little nap in, and that was magic, man.
Yeah, the Japanese have some things figured out.
They definitely, in fact, the other thing they had is like, there was like, you could legitimately nap at your desk. If you brought like eye shields, I saw people that would literally just be napping at their desk. There's no qualms. Like, you got a nap, just get her done. I was like, wow, I can groove
I
with
like to
that.
think we have a slightly more humane version of that going on in Kumo Space.
Yeah, it is one of the advantages. Napping is good. Please take naps, people. So I want to put a pause in this half of the conversation. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk a bit about the state of VC right now with AI. And then we want to talk about what it's like being multimodal executive. So hang on to your hat. We're going to be right back. All right, welcome back. We're here for the second half of Tech Careers and Money Talk with Brett Martin. And we want to change the pace. We want to talk about VC investing right now in the age of AI, and then also in today's environment. I'm really curious, what is it like today to be raising capital, especially in this high interest rate environment? In fact, I think I saw you do a post the other day on LinkedIn around, hey, here's some things that you can do to raise capital right now.
It's a weird market and probably confusing for entrepreneurs because on one hand, the market's down, the market's been down, the interest rates are up. Everyone's talking about austerity and cost cutting, and it's honestly the bar for raising capital has significantly gone up. I mean, in the height of the boom, a couple guys from Uber with, a few slides of a deck were raising, millions of dollars at the snap of their finger. And now, the same people are being asked for, okay, show me a few $1 million in ARR before I give you your first round of capital, right? So, the bar has moved, and, it feels quite challenging. But then at the same time, you've got anything that's got, Gen AI strapped to the name is raising millions of dollars with a couple slides and a snap of a finger. So, the way I describe the market, it's like, when you pull your like frozen dinner out of your microwave, out of the freezer, and you put it in the microwave, and one bite is freezing cold and the next bite is scalding hot. I think that describes the venture market in 2024.
So do you think with, now that I think when the market becomes more conservative and people want to see, seed and pre-seed companies, in a better position as an investor, running a VC fund, are you getting looks at, and let's talk about non-AI companies for a second. Are you getting a look at, healthier product coming your way, or not?
I mean, I think there's no question that it is a great time to be an investor. I mean, I think compared to that time which was kind of irrational exuberance, now there's a big sort of tectonic technology trend, right? In the form of AI, right? We got computers that can see and read and write and speak and hear. And what's crazy new, business applications does that unlock, right? And maybe the biggest difference, between now and sort of the last, the crypto boom was that these are real companies. These are companies that are actually solving real problems and making real money. They're going zero to a few $1 million in revenue in a few months. I mean, we have one of our portfolio companies. Wow. They went zero to a $9 million run rate in 7 months. I mean, that's an amazing business by any, it doesn't matter what technology is doing it, right? So, I think it's just an amazing time to be alive and to be investing. And, how do you play? Like, are these things, a lot of these companies are growing fast, but they're churning. They haven't quite found their footing. But I'm an optimist. And I also don't fully buy into this narrative that, only incumbents are going to capture value. Like that's a recurring thread. And I think there are strong arguments for it. Like, they already have the data. They already have the distribution. They're just going to drop, their chat bots into any text box. And I think that will happen, but I think that's underselling what entrepreneurs are capable of and, underselling the creativity of entrepreneurs. Like, I think they're going to come up with completely new applications that weren't ever before possible. And there's going to be $1 billion businesses as a result.
And so when you're thinking, so like sort of balancing those two sides, Brett. So you have this side where, okay, it sounds like investors want you to be more selective in what you're vetting. You also have I'm assuming a larger velocity of deal flow coming out, especially at the AI side. What are you doing now to vet and make decisions as an investor?
Yes.
To really make sure that you're trying to select the right ones.
So I think you got a couple of things going on. What happened was basically, when the market went down, and 2022 and 23, everyone started cutting burn. No, they were told the smart people raised bridges immediately and then cut burn. And what happened is in late 2023, 2024, people had been waiting to go out to market. So folks had said, the bad companies were trying to fix their business. The good companies were saying, hey, why would I go raise money now when the cost of capital is so high? I'm going to wait till the market comes back. Well, they've been waiting for years now. They got to go out to market. And so, you have all these really good companies finally who have been growing for years, finally coming back out to market. So as an investor, it's just like, it's amazing. You got net new companies with AI that are ripping. And then you've got companies that have been around for a while that have, restructured and reduced their cost structure and improved their business and have been growing for years, also coming out to market. So just, that's why it's a great time to invest and why it's really busy. As an investor, how do you assess those things? I mean, look, this is kind of a Jeff Bezos, don't invest in the new thing, invest in the same, the thing that isn't, invest in the thing that isn't changing. So, we
Right.
look for all the things that make it good about, we look for big markets with serial founders with, deep domain expertise who have, lots of
Mm.
revenue, growing really fast, super high margin. They've got network effects and data moats and scale advantages and, unique regulatory capture and all the things that make a good business. So I don't think anything has fundamentally changed about investing. You just got to be able to, sift through all the noise.
Right. And it sounds like you just have to, I mean, like any other good solid investment, you got to be patient, you got to take your time, and you got to be as choosy as possible.
Yeah, first rule of investing is don't lose money.
Right. Exactly. Second rule, look at rule number
Yep,
one,
go
right?
back.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I was trying to boil down to is like, is there some, like thinking about that core list, and then now, like when you think about some of this new technology, is there a new filter? Is there now a new line item that's on that list of due diligence or risk criteria that's going to filter things out that maybe wasn't there 10 months ago? That maybe 10 or 12 months ago, you would have said, oh, okay, that looks good. Now it's like, well, if it doesn't meet this criteria, I'm not even going to go deeper on it.
Well, at the risk of getting too kind of esoteric inside baseball about, early stage investing, I think what happened is you had kind of valuation increases across the capital stack, right? So, even
Yep.
pre-seed, seed, A down to, B, C, D, E, later stages, right? The later stages had the greatest run-ups in valuation. So if you just look at multiple expansion, right, these late stage, companies, like that's why you had all these unicorns printed, with billions of dollars, right? When the public markets corrected, right, that creates a chain reaction where, all of a sudden the closest comp to this late stage private company is a, recently taken public company, and now all of a sudden its multiples come down in half. Well, guess what, that starts cascading through the private markets, and so you have kind of this compression of multiples, starting with the later stage private companies, but then kind of, and working its way back to early stage. Now it's the most at these late stage private companies. And so when that makes its way all the way down to pre-seed, we don't see as much multiple compression, like, because we never had as much of a run up, right? Like my, entry point started at around $5 million, 3, 4, $5 million when I started 10 years ago. It got up to about $10 million post money in the boom. And now it's actually come back down. We're doing sort of 5, 6, 7, $8 million post money valuations. So whereas, I sort of moved from 5 to 10 and then back, the late stage, let's say Series B companies went from being $200-300 million valuations to $3 billion valuations, so kind of a 10x change, and now they come down 90% again. In our market, what we see is the thing we worry about more now is because the bar has increased, right? Like we talked about earlier, I have to worry about
Right.
financing risk a lot more. So whereas before I used to be able to say,
Mm.
okay, I'm going to give this company $500,000, $1 million. We're going to pull together a team. We're going to get some early traction, let's say 10K MRR, 100, 200K ARR. Then we're going to be able to go raise a, $3 to $5 million institutional seed round. Now we can't count on that, right? Because that seed round, the bar is a lot
Mm.
higher, right? We talked about how these companies are raising with now $1 million, $2 million ARR. So I have to worry about, okay, I just can't expect follow-on capital to come. This company has to make some serious progress before I can expect any other investors to, take the bag from me. So we now are syndicating risk by pulling in more
Mm.
investors and sort of us co-leading with other pre-seed investors, making sure that our companies have $1.5 million, $2 million to make it to that seed round. right? So I don't know if that's interesting to your audience. I apologize if that was, too
Yeah,
specific, but
no, it
that's the
is
real market play
not.
right now.
No. I mean, we have had on different VCs. I mean, going into detail on creating investment thesis and going into a lot of this, but you'll find that, we have a lot of, technology professionals that also are very money focused, who want to know and understand the nuts and bolts of investing. So no, this is spot on, and a really nice, rich vein of conversation, because what I'm hearing from you is that, when you're selecting companies on that list of your, due diligence or must meet criteria, there is now this criteria of, we have to see some level of productivity, right? Meaning that it's going to have to get to a higher level of MRR and production, and be able to sustain itself for a longer period of time, because you don't know what it's going to take to get to the follow-on round. So you're having to manage that risk and understand those levers a lot more clearly.
Yeah, a lot more talk of, okay, if no more money comes, what do we, how do we get to profitability fast? And that's been a positive change, just in the way of thinking, right? People are just thinking about making money as opposed to just raising it, and that's a net positive for the ecosystem altogether, I think.
Well, I think so, because I think, and I've seen this, at least, when you think about, 2008 to 2010, and you see now, I graduated and started working right in the dot-com bust, and I was able to observe some things there. But it just seems to me that when there's easy money, it's easy to get a lot of bloat in the system, meaning that, people can maybe hire ahead, and they're not really being thoughtful about the area that they're hiring ahead into, versus when you're in a very constrained environment, people are making harder choices. And I think that's going to then just force the decision on companies to say, did I make the right decision? Is the market moving in my direction? Am I able to get traction? Which allows us, as investors, to choose, I think, healthier product, right? Tough times create better companies.
No doubt, no doubt. I couldn't be more happy to have capital to deploy than in early 2024.
Well, and I think that's important for people to understand, because I think people get fearful when there is downward pressure in the market, and the perception that's given is that there's challenges. However, I think as investors, what that does for us is it clears the board. It takes the stupid money off the table. It takes the people that made bad decisions off the table. You're able to then start seeing companies that are operating a lot more efficiently. And I think it's time to deploy capital.
Yeah, well, we're definitely seeing who's wearing shorts now that the tide's out.
100%. For some reason, it made me. Did you ever see that movie Inside Man with Denzel Washington and Jodie Foster?
Oh, classic. Betraying my age now.
Yeah. Well, but it reminded me of the quote that she said, when there's blood on the street, buy real estate, right? That was funny. So is there, when you think about AI, so then you mentioned, like, there is this dichotomy. So all of these, there's a lot of companies that you need to make sure that you're clear on how they're making money. Is there some noise in and around, let's say, the AI space, where you are seeing some companies that may have some overinflated valuations, or you're really not sure about the product, that maybe have more risk that you're having to actually wade through? I think and I'm asking that because I know, people who listen to this show have a lot of questions around, number one, as I think some people got sort of scorched by what was going on in blockchain and all that sort of stuff. Now they're thinking about deploying capital in AI, and they're seeing it as a different mechanism, as you mentioned, that can make a lot more money, but they want to understand, how can they make better decisions this time going into that particular space?
Yeah, I think that, AI is the new blockchain, right? So people are just sprinkling it on anything and making, that makes it exciting, right? If you looked at the most recent YC class, there were, more than 50% of the companies were being presented as, disruptive AI companies. And so a healthy dose of skepticism should be applied. Now, as we already said, right, like that the difference is that unlike blockchain companies where you're like, okay, how is this going to be useful, or does this have any sort of real world application? These AI companies are really solving problems and have customers and are making revenue, right? So that makes it different. I think the question there is just like, okay, well, how defensible or long term is this? Or if you can, so many of these YC companies were saying, "Oh, we built this model in 2 months, and look how good it is." And then I think the obvious question is, well, if you built that in 2 months, then how valuable is it really? And who else could build it in 2 months, right? So I think you have to get back to again, pretty banal and timeless questions such as like, who's this user? Why are they using it? How are you getting integrated deeply into their workflows? What are they ripping and replacing? What type of integrations do you have? What sort of data moat do you create? Are there some sort of, network effects for your product? I mean, nothing really new here other than just acknowledging that, this technology is readily available and open source. And so, how do you create really great the best product on the market, and how do you get some sort of lock in with your customers? No, unfortunately, I have no silver bullet other than just doing the work.
Well, but I think what you said. If I were to roll that up, I think what you said that's really important is what we learned from blockchain. I think a lot of people, and I did not buy into the hype. I was very much, I'm going to wait and see. Was spending most of my time more on commercial real estate at that point. Very excited about what's going on in AI. What I heard from you is it's about the basics, right? You cannot forget the fundamentals. You can't get caught up in the FOMO and the excitement. You have to double check, and especially being focused on, if somebody is rapidly iterating on this thing and creates a product very quickly, what is going to protect or differentiate that as you move into the marketplace? And again, surrounding that with just fundamental questions. But there's not going to be a fast track or secret sauce to figure out what's going on. You just got to go back to basics.
Yeah, I mean, there's no generally get rich quick scheme is something to steer away from. I mean, although I will say these meme coins on Solana right now are pumping. So if you're looking to gamble, that's probably not the worst place.
So I do want to take, we have some time left. And I think one of the things that I wanted to do is just get on and we can have this conversation in front of people, but it's about, you are a multimodal executive. You have a role at Kumo Space. You have a role as a general partner of this VC firm. What's it like? Like, give people sort of the view into what is it like being a multimodal executive, and what are the things that you love about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's rewarding. It's amazing the perspective and vantage point that I get. I think my favorite part is just that, I don't know. My philosophy is that you can do a lot of things. You can do anything you want. You can't do everything. And if you want to do multiple things, you got to make sure that they are constantly self-reinforcing each other. Because, if you're being pulled in a bunch of different directions, you're not going to move anywhere. But if every step you take forward, on one project actually pulls the other projects forward as well, then you can start to get, to your point, compound benefits and leverage. And so, I actually think being here today is, a great example. Like, I think you reached out in part because I, wear a couple hats, and in general, I'm always trying to get leverage on any engagement, for both Kumo Space and Charge. And, I teach a machine learning course at Columbia, and I have now hundreds of students that are data analysts, data scientists, machine learning experts, and I try to get leverage out of those relationships and network for my portfolio companies at Charge. I try to hire those folks, at Kumo Space. And so it's a constant um, balancing act, but, in the best scenarios, they all, reinforce each other, and I'm getting kind of compound leverage out of, each position. Um, I think, the downside of that is that, to get all of that compound leverage, you actually have to do the work in each space, and it is hard to find times to turn off or power down completely. It's hard to. There's only so many hours in the day, and so what I end up doing is I end up doing meetings or podcasts or things like this all during the day. I actually counted my calendar last week. I had 57 scheduled meetings um, last week, not counting impromptu ones in Kumo Space and phone calls and things like that. And so I end up kind of, my days are really packed, and then I end up working at night. And so I think that's a luxury I have. I don't have kids. I can my work, get to focus on my work babies, but I don't know if everyone has that same amount of disposable time that they can apply to their work. So certainly doesn't come without costs. I guess that's all I'll say.
No, it doesn't. But at the same time, you mentioned, work babies. I think for, when you start aligning your skills and your passions and you're doing things that you really enjoy and are passionate about, and it's obvious to me that you're passionate about Kumo Space and what that product, the problem that it solves, the need that it's serving, right? Of allowing remote employees to be participating much more inside of these hybrid companies. And then also, Charge, when you are, investing, and it's exciting to be able to be a part of the growth of new ideas and new concepts, and aligns with your skill set. Yeah, sometimes the work doesn't feel so much like work, right? I mean, the tiredness, the exhaustion feels the same, but I think sometimes the work can put, energy and wind in your sails.
Heck yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't love it. That's for sure.
Well, and that's something that I think sometimes people, I know they ask, like, okay, to me, okay, you left corporate, you have all this stuff going on, the question is why? And I think, to me, it's really about legacy, right? It's like, yeah, I built the resume, I've shown the world what I could do out in corporate, but for this part, it's really about building something that creates multi-generational impact, right? For me, it's leaning into technology employees, trying to help educate them on a lot of things that I and some of my peers had to stumble through, so they don't have to stumble through it. I am curious, you're getting ready to take a vacation. You mentioned that before. How do you think about resting and unplugging? Is it really you sort of do rest and unplug sprints where you get away for a couple of weeks and just get out of it? How does that work for you?
Yeah. So we're gonna go on a ski touring trip in basically climbing up mountains and then skiing down them and then climbing back up them. And I think part of the reason that it's either that or surfing for me, and I think one of the reasons I love kind of like surfing or climbing or snowboarding is it really puts you into the moment. If you're trying to stand on a board that's on a wave, or if you're hanging off the side of a mountain, it clarifies things and focuses you and really helps. You can't help but tune out everything else. And so for me, I like to kind of immerse myself in experience, and that gives me a little bit of a break from the omnipresent demands of work.
No, it's so true. Is that when you do things that demand your time and attention like that, physically. I know we talked about the fact that I recently got ice bath. Like when all of a sudden you get in there and you're immersed, like you're definitely in that moment. But that's fun stuff. Is there anything you do sort of in your week to week that helps sort of take your mind off things?
week to week. Yeah, I, I guess, we live in New York City and, I think it's funny. A lot of people churn out of New York City. I think they have kids and then they stop going out and then they stop, doing all the things that make New York City great. And then there's no reason for them to be here. And I fully agree. I think if you're going to stay in New York City, then you got to keep taking advantage of it. And so we go see shows and go to concerts, every week, at least a couple times, try to go out and see some art, get inspired. And so, I think dancing is maybe a little bit of that same thing. You're in the
Yeah.
vibe. And so, I guess as someone who builds software for remote teams, like whenever I can, I try to get in my body and, out of the machine and really enjoy the physical world as much as possible.
I think that's a great takeaway. How did this journey start for you? How did you, start doing both? Did the VC come first or did Kumo come first? How did that happen?
Well, I've been, Charge Ventures is 10 years old. So, that's definitely been around for a while. Actually, Kumo Space, we incubated, with, the CEO is a guy, Yang Mao, who, has been my co-founder on prior, ventures. And, that's one of the reasons we could do it. It's just because like I've known him for a long time and know he's great. And so we sort of incubated that a bit out of Charge and launched it. That's ideally we could do a couple of those every fund and have a nice ownership stake and have Charge also be kind of a foundry for next great things.
Oh, that's super exciting. Would you say, is there one of those capacities that you feel like is your strength, or was it the strength of operations that led you to lead into Kumo? Like how do you think about where your strengths are and where you're actually working to become better?
Oh, well, I honestly I love investing. Investing for Charge is the best possible job one can have. Honestly, the reason we incubated Kumo Space is just because, we see a lot of great business ideas, things with lots of revenue, margin opportunities, big markets, and, we usually would just invest in them. In the case of Kumo Space, I think we were looking for something like it. We couldn't find it. And, it like spoke to me personally. Like I said, it's like an extension of my person was to like, create this opportunity for people to live their best lives and, be productive and, have the flexibility. And so I guess it spoke from a personal perspective, which is the only reason to actually to sign up for the hard work of building the company.
Well, that's good. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. And before we get to the end, we always go through a little fire round here, asking you 5 questions. What would you say is the worst investing advice you've ever received?
Don't invest with friends. If you look around at every person that's a billionaire, they're all just doing business with their friends all the time. So that's something they tell middle-class people to prevent them from making wealth.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's a good one. So in the midst of all this stuff, how do you keep learning?
For me, it's people. It's talking to the smartest people in their field and, being, permitting me to ask stupid questions. And that's how I learn, is through conversation with smart folks like you.
Oh, thanks, man. I think we already answered this, but what do you do to recharge?
It's either surf, hang from the side of a mountain, or ski down it, or if I'm in New York, it's getting a little dance in.
I love that. What's advice that you would give your younger self working in tech?
Don't wait for the outside world to validate you. Just believe in yourself.
Oh, that's great. What soft skill has helped your career the most?
Motivating people.
Well, that's great. Hey, Brett, I can't thank you enough for your valuable time. I know that you're super busy. How can people find out more about you and about Kumo Space?
Yeah, well, just hit me up on LinkedIn, Brett Martin or check out KumoSpace.com. And, would love to get you set up with a virtual office. And if you're building the next big thing, then, feel free to shoot me a line on LinkedIn, and would love to hear from you. Just mention Tech Careers and Money Talk.
Awesome. I'll make sure and put that in the show notes. Brett, thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for having me. Have a great rest of your day.